DSPN, the Devlin Sports Podcast Network.
Welcome into the DSPN, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lachlan Waugh. I'm typically behind the scenes, covertly producing this show, pushing buttons here and there. But tonight I'm here to talk to you about the second test between the All Blacks and France in Wellington, down there in the capital. I'm up here in Auckland. That one was down in Wellington. We had a test last week in Dunedin. We're in Wellington tonight. Next week we're in Hamilton. 3 tests, of course. This was number 2. Let's get to the facts. 43-17, the final score. New Zealand really running away with it. Not so much in the second half. They ran away with it in that sort of 10 to 40 minute period in the first half, which I think left a lot of All Blacks fans, including myself, just absolutely buzzing at half time. And I think a lot of rugby fans, maybe around the world, pundits, other teams, other coaches, anyone involved with the global rugby community, they would have been going, this All Black team, they're looking all right. And why are they looking all right? Set piece and forwards. That is what drove the victory for them tonight. And it was just awesome to watch. You know, I'm on the outskirts of the media. I guess I work for the media here in New Zealand, but I'm not Martin Devlin. I'm not people on the TV. I'm not hosting radio shows. I guess I'm not directly involved with New Zealand media. I'm sort of more on the fringe a bit more, producing things, if that makes sense. You know, when you're in the media, you kind of have to be, well, you know, you have to be impartial, objective, unbiased. It's kind of hard to be unbiased when you're a New Zealand rugby fan watching that first half, because once we got through the first 10 minutes, which was not a nice 10 minutes really from the All Blacks, shoddy. You had that Artie Savia knock on. You had a pretty poor kick from Beauden Barrett, a very nervy exit out of 22 from Cam Roigard. France had a lot of the ball, a lot of phases in our 22. That first 10 minutes was very similar to last week, and I sat there thinking, geez, have the All Blacks really learnt anything? Yes, they have, because then they got their first try, which was an awesome set play off a set play off a set piece, in the sense that it was a line out, and then you had Christian Leo Willie faking a pass, but actually Artie Savia had it the whole time, waited a little bit, gave it off to Cam Roigard, who had no one in front of him, strolled over. It was just perfection. Savvy, smart, ballsy, because look, you got to get the line out right before you actually do that. So there's a few, cogs that have to be in motion before you actually get the end result, right? But a great try. And that try, that set the foundation, because from then on, the All Blacks, it felt the pressure alleviated a little bit. You know, how much pressure is really on them, in the sense that they're such a great rugby side. This is close to their best 15, you could argue, against a French side that's not its best 15, if we're being honest. They played very well in Dunedin. They were valiant in parts tonight with France, but we know this isn't their best team. They've got a lot of blokes back home who are first-teamers. But the All Blacks, up front, their forwards, their set piece, the pace they moved at, very similar to last week, they did it again. And it is so encouraging, because, when you see something go well and go to plan, but in parts, you see the green shoots, you're excited by it, but you want to see it in bigger portions, right? It's like you're at a candy shop and you're like, I like that one, I've got the sour worms over there, I've got little, Feijoa lollies there. You pick all the little bits that you liked, you ignore the ones you don't like, you get them in a bag, you shake it up, and then there you go, you got your nice little bag of pick and mix, right? It's kind of like the same thing. We picked out bits from that first test that we really liked, and we just wanted to see it expanded. We wanted to see it in a bigger helping, and we got it. From minute 10 to minute 40, the All Blacks were clinical as you could expect, mainly their forwards and their set piece. And what I really, really liked is that they didn't really move away from it. Why would you? If something's working and it's a winning formula, or it feels like it's building into a winning formula, there's no need to move away from it. So they stuck with their forwards. They stuck with their set piece. They ran it really down the middle of that sort of French team. They took the contest physically to them. And they got results, and they kept doing it. They resisted to play too much outside. And then when they did start to throw the ball around was when you noticed that Amoni Narawa had a few good runs. Rieko Ioane got a bit more involved. All of a sudden, they did start to move it wide, and they did get results. But before that, they resisted doing that, which I actually really liked. It was a sign that, hey, we know how we're beating you. We're not going to get cute and try and do other things to see if we can beat you by more or in different ways. We're going to stick to it, and we're just going to keep piling points on. And that's what they did, the All Blacks. And it was great to watch. As a fan of the game in general, it was fun to watch. But as an All Blacks fan, it's been a while since I felt that excited by an All Black performance. Not even the win over Ireland last year got me that excited. So that was great. That was the main positive, really, is the set piece in the forwards and the way that was just weaponised by New Zealand. It was great to watch. Look, this French team, by the way, it wasn't as if they were really poor in that first half. And that's what I really want to focus on, was that bulk of that first half from the All Blacks, ignoring the first 10 minutes with some errors. France weren't really bad. They were just outplayed. And it was almost the class in the All Black team just showed through. Once they got rolling, once they got a bit of momentum, they got some results on the scoreboard, they just started to run away with it. And France, couldn't keep up. To their credit, there were a couple of moments where they did get the ball, they worked through some phases, and they got meters. So what we saw from France, once again, was when they throw it around, when they can move the ball, they do get meters, and the All Blacks defence was tested. The difference this week, which is another plus, was the scramble defence was really good. There weren't these gaping holes in the defensive line. It was a bit more structured, a bit more reliable. And as I say, the scrambling of the defence was very, very good from the All Blacks by comparison to last week. The fact that France were able to get meters in that middle 60, what's 22 times 44, that middle 56 meters. The fact that France were able to get quite a bit of ground there, okay, but the All Blacks defensively were able to hold them out from a scoring perspective, which was good. Again, they didn't really do that last week. Second half, not as good from the All Blacks. The mistakes crept in. Obviously, we saw that off the first kickoff. It was funny, the first kickoff for the half, when Fabian Holland got lifted up and got misjudged. The next couple, when France kicked off to the All Blacks, Fabian Holland didn't get lifted. He move. I'm just going to catch this on my own. Feet firmly on the ground. Just let me catch it on my own. So they didn't take any risks, which, again, smart, adaptive. Didn't take the risks. Didn't need to take the risks. But yeah, it felt France had the edge in the penalty count in the second half. I don't think that the All Blacks bench impacted the second half how you'd want them to. Tavatafa Nawe, who had a cameo in the first half when Geordie went off, I believe it was Geordie, had a couple of good runs and then very involved in the second half. And that's what you want. Guys can get very little reward for their work, but if they're involved and they are putting themselves in the action, well, that's better than nothing, isn't it? That wasn't even the case for Timothy Tavatafa Nawe. He did get results. But apart from Tavatafa Nawe, I don't really think the bench came on and did a huge amount. I actually thought Duplessis Kirifi was a little bit unlucky with some of the penalties that he copped, but just, I felt this last week. I'm feeling it a little bit now. I'm waiting for there to be more of an impact from him. He hasn't been bad. I'm just wondering if there's more of a level he can get to. Look, that's probably me being very picky, to be fair, being very, very picky. But the bench wasn't as great as I would have hoped. I wonder if from here Cortez Ratama might not feature in the next test, and we'll see Noah Hotham get a run, who was available for selection. I had to double check that. So I'm curious to see what the makeup of the bench will be for the third test. Because, as I say, I don't think they impacted the game as much as they could have. But France got more of the ball in the second half. They had many more opportunities. Obviously, they scored 2 tries. We got 2 as well. I think it was an equal second half in the end. It was 29-3 at half-time, wasn't it? And the final score was 43-17, so I think that's 14 apiece in the second half. So, look, make of that what you will. I think one area that's a little bit for the All Blacks is that when they score, and we saw it more last week than this week, but when they score, they tend to just fall off a little bit. Or when things go their way, they tend to be almost slow starters after those moments. And actually, that could just be a slow starter or a slow restarter after a break and play. Because they didn't look great coming out at the second half, which was actually a bit of a downer because they were so good to end the first half that you're sitting there thinking, great, continue, let's go, and then just a little bit shoddy, a little bit toothless in the second half, and that was a little bit disappointing. So I wonder if there's an element to the All Blacks, and look, I'm being very picky by saying this, I wonder if there's an element to them that's a bit, they just can't keep their heads in the contest as much as they should after scoring or after a break and play. Again, look, I'm being very picky there. Like I'm looking for things to complain about because I'm a silly, dumb sports fan. But look, at the end of the day, there are a few negatives, and the second half performance could have been much better. The first 10 minutes I didn't really like, but that 10 to 40 minute period was brilliant from New Zealand. The forwards, the set piece was great. The breakdown, I don't actually think either side really had an edge at the breakdown, but the All Blacks were great at recycling the ball quickly. And I just want to finish off with Tupu Vai's try. That try is one of the greatest tries that I've ever seen. This play of perfect offloading and passing, moving at pace, was so much fun to watch. And you saw Rieko Ioane have a really good role. It's really, had Ardie Savea bust through the line, have a great run. Rieko Ioane then had a charging run that got him some metres, and then he keeps it alive. A really good offload to Fabian Holland, which I actually thought, on the screen, it looked like it had been misplaced, but Holland grabbed it, and then he finds Vai. It's like when you're playing around in the schoolyard, and there's so much fun in what you're doing that it becomes contagious to keep going. And that's what I think happens a lot in sports. In rugby and rugby league, that when you're making breaks, you're getting meters, you're getting some sort of advantage on attack, and you're throwing the ball around, and it's working and it's paying off, and the passes are sticking, it becomes contagious to keep going, and you're having so much fun and you're enjoying it, and you see it a lot in league and rugby, and that was what happened there. You just could sort of tell that the players were loving what was going on. They were loving these offloads, they were loving the passage of play, the pace they were playing at. It was exciting, it was so fun to watch, and I think Grant Nisbet's just losing his mind calling this, and I'm up standing, just clapping, loving it, and not just as an All Black fan, but I think any rugby fan can watch that and go, man, that's what we want to see as fans. We want to see this fun, exhilarating, up-tempo rugby. It was just awesome to watch. And that has got to be the highlight of the test. And it perfectly encapsulated that first half of the All Blacks, in the sense that passage of play, they had their way with France. They were moving the ball without any resistance. And they were moving it in a risky manner. But France couldn't really do anything about it. That was sort of that first half. The All Blacks just took the game by the scruff of the neck and said, this is what we're doing. You don't really get a choice. This is what we're doing. And France are like, yeah, we can't really stop you. And I said it earlier on, I'll say it again, France weren't bad. They got meters when they had the ball. When they actually looked after it and worked through some phases, they found some real estate. They found some land to bank. Discipline wasn't terrible. I thought the yellow cards were... I thought the Beauden Barrett one was kind of fair by the letter of the law. The French one, again, I thought was fair. I was texting a friend who actually said he thought it was a red. And I said, no, that can't be a red. It's not cynical enough. I actually thought the referees were pretty good. Apart from that moment in the second half where they had to go back for when the ball went out, which was a bit, someone should be keeping an eye on Nick Berry throwing his flag up there. How did that happen? There was another moment where, it might have been that one, I think it was a different one, where the ball had gone out and France were under advantage, but the advantage was so long ago that the commentators themselves were saying, how on earth is this still an advantage? What's going on here? And then the ref reversed and said, no, sorry, the advantage was over. So those were two sort of clangers. But apart from that, I actually thought the referees were pretty good. I actually think that the way that the Geordie Barrett tackle that led to the French yellow card, I think that was handled really well. How they quickly went back and looked at it, didn't waste too much time, made the call, put him in the bin, and I'm glad it wasn't a red. I worry that World Rugby as a whole, the referees, but really as a whole, they can get a bit trigger happy with head contact. And when you saw Geordie Barrett's head go to the ground, and one of the French players, I think his shoulder might have gone into Barrett, or his head might have gone into Barrett's head as he was going down, sort of as collateral damage, really. I was like, I hope they don't look at that and go, head-on-head contact, or there's contact to the head, it's forceful red. And I'm glad they didn't. And I don't think they would have, but part of me was a bit nervous. You got to be nervous with rugby referees, don't you? So, no, referees I thought were pretty good. No real complaints there. No real complaints about the test overall. It was a good watch. It was fun to watch. And I think every All Blacks fan would have watched that and thought to themselves, yeah, here we go. This is what we want to see. This is what we want our team to do. And it's not that we haven't seen it. It's just that we were kind of waiting for more of it, a bigger helping of this, and we got it. The forwards and the set piece, again, was just superb from the All Blacks. It was great to watch. There's an argument that are they going to be able to do that against the Springboks? Are they going to be able to do that against a full-strength French side? Are they going to be able to do that against Ireland or England? Not sure. We can only speculate. But they did it against a very good French team, because we saw last week, and we've seen it, and we saw it in parts tonight. France aren't that bad. Their B team isn't bad. The same way that an All Blacks B team, if it went overseas, wouldn't be that bad either. So you can only beat what's in front of you, and the All Blacks did that. They battered them. It was great to watch. It was a lot of fun to watch. And I could talk about it for hours. I've probably gone on a bit long tonight, to be fair. But what a watch, what a test, a lot of fun as a fan and as trying to be as neutral as I possibly can. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. Hope you loved it as well. Thank you for tuning in. The DSPN appreciates everything. Clicks, likes, subscribes, comments. Appreciate all of the support because it helps us do what we do. And we love it and we enjoy it and it's a lot of fun. So thank you for tuning in. Please do tune in from Monday. Tony Johnson's going to be in studio with Martin. Devlin will have a lot of other rugby bits and pieces throughout the week as well. A lot of fun building up to this third test. And as the weeks pass, as the games go by, it means we get closer to those 2 South African tests, those 2 Springboks tests, which those will be good watches, as we know.
This is the DSPN.